Hey y'all. Okay, so we have finally arrived to the last part of Kamala Be Lion. So this is part 5 of Kamala Be Lion. If you have not seen parts 1 through 4, I recommend that you go see parts 1 through 4. If you are confused, I have taken it upon myself to fact check everything Kamala said at the presidential debate since the moderators chose to be biased. So we are on lie number 25. Kamala says because of the work this administration has done with NATO, Ukraine is an independent and free country. She says Donald Trump would have allowed Putin to take over Ukraine and sit in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of the country. Not true. Russia had not invaded Ukraine in over 8 years. If this administration was truly working, the war wouldn't have broken out to begin with. What they did was use us to clean up their mess. Putin knew we had weak leadership and seized on the opportunity, forcing this administration to drain our resources and send billions to Ukraine, along with our intelligence and our military, to defend a country that is not even in NATO and is not even one of our allies. If Trump would have allowed Putin to take over Kyiv like she said, why he didn't do it in the entire 4 years he was in office? Instead, what Trump did was put sanctions on Russia that Biden lifted. Trump slowed progress down with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and he forced NATO to increase spending on their defense. The two most recent times that Russia invaded Ukraine was in 2014 and 2022, both being under Democrat leadership. So what happened in that in-between time? Putin just took a break? No. Putin knew Trump was not to be played with. Lie number 26. There is not one soldier that is in active duty in any combat zone around the world, and that's the first time this century. If this is true, why do we still have soldiers being killed and injured in combat zones several times this year? According to the Department of Defense, we have soldiers stationed in multiple combat zones. For example, we have 2,500 in Iraq and 900 in Syria. 3 soldiers were killed in a drone strike in Jordan in January. 40 were injured. 2 Navy SEALs drowned due to Iranian weapon smuggling in February and were lost in the Arabian Sea. 8 soldiers injured in a drone strike in Syria in August, along with 7 more injured in a raid. And she got the nerve to say Trump disrespects the military when she doesn't even acknowledge them? Lie number 27. Trump negotiated the weakest deal. He bypassed the Afghan government and negotiated with the Taliban, which got 5,000 terrorists released and invited the Taliban to Camp David. Now, y'all, I'm with them when they right. We are not supposed to negotiate with terrorists, much less release prisoners back to them, and then invite them to Camp David? Horrible idea. In my personal opinion, the Taliban should never be welcomed on U.S. soil. So flag definitely on the play. However, to say it was completely a weak deal, that's not true. Trump negotiated a peace deal on February 9, 2020, after us being at war with Afghanistan for over 18 years. After we spent over $1 trillion funding this war, and after we've lost thousands of lives. Abandoning Afghanistan wasn't the goal, but at this point, it was pointless for the U.S. to keep fighting this endless war. Trump made it clear when he was in office, his goal was to get out, period, and wanted soldiers home by May 1st. So yes, he went directly to the source and negotiated a peace deal. Parts of the deal stated that roughly of the 1,300 troops in Afghanistan, around 5,000 U.S. troops would be leaving, and 5 bases would be closed within 135 days of the deal being signed, and the rest within the year. And during this time, the Taliban cannot attack Afghanistan's soil, harming any U.S. soldiers as we exit. The deal also allowed the release of up to 5,000 Taliban prisoners in exchange for up to 1,000 prisoners from the other side. And Taliban and Afghanistan will begin negotiations to welcome in peace. However, as expected with terrorists, the Taliban half-ass held their end of the bargain. and continued attacking Afghanistan and other areas, and teamed up with Al-Qaeda and increased their forces with the return of their prisoners. However, they did limit their violence on Afghanistan's coalition and had not attacked U.S. forces per the agreement. Afghanistan's elections resulted in a new change of leadership that created further complications in the peace agreement between Afghanistan and the Taliban. And due to political conflict, neither side was now willing to negotiate per the deal. But despite the conflict, Operation Bring Troops Home was still in progress, with 10,500 troops exiting out of Afghanistan. Kamala said 4 administrations said that they would get out of this war, but Biden was the one who did. Wrong. Trump did. Trump managed to decrease the U.S. force in Afghanistan from 13,000 to 2,500 by January 15, 2021. The lowest military presence in Afghanistan since 2001. Biden had one job when he took office pertaining to this war: follow the plan and get the rest out safely. Instead, he delayed the withdrawal date, kept our soldiers there longer with less military help, and pushed the date to exit back to August 31st. This pissed the Taliban off, and they responded to that decision in April, saying that the U.S., by not keeping to your agreement to be out by the 1st, will now be responsible for the consequence. Biden's responded by calling the Taliban's bluff, saying it was unlikely that they would take over, and he was wrong. The Taliban took over Afghanistan in August, and quicker than Biden thought, and 13 of our soldiers came home in body bags. Lie number 28. Trump consistently attempted to use race to divide the American people. No, ma'am. You consistently use race to divide people. You supported Joe Biden when he sat there and told black people, if we don't vote for him, we not black. You pander and code switch to whomever you are in front of at the time, and have displayed about 11 different accents.
Have you no empathy, man? You know, for the suffering of other people.
I love you back.
You may not be a union member. You better thank a union member. For the 5-day work week, you better thank a union member.
And you like to play victim when you're called out on it. 1 minute it's, if you got something to say it to my face. And in the next minute it's, we've got to stop all this name calling and putting people down, and there's more that we have in common that separates us. You tried to spark racial unrest by accusing Trump of not renting to black families, and he has not been found guilty of that. Not only has Trump rented to black families, he fought to overturn a law that made it illegal to rent to blacks and Jews, and was the first in Palm Springs to welcome them. Also, not only has he rented to black families, but he has given a plethora of black people loans, grants, and jobs. You used Obama to come after black men for not supporting you, and you keep trying to identify as a black woman when we know damn well you are not an African-American black female. You are using blackface and trying to identify with black struggles to pull on the heartstrings of black Americans, and we know you're full of shit. And that's why this topic was important to come up. You are a fraud, and you are the division, not Trump. But I digress. Law number 29. Kamala says she is not taking anybody's guns away. This is yet another walk back from everything she was running on in 2019. She told Craig at MSNBC that she supports a mandatory weapons buyback program.
What would you do about the millions of, specifically, assault weapons that are already in circulation? What do you do about those?
Well, there are approximately 5 million, to your point, Craig. We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program. It's got to be smart. We got to do it the right way.
She told Jimmy Fallon a buyback program was a good idea.
So a buyback program is a good idea. Now we need to do it the right way.
And let's not forget, she said it's nothing she would change from Biden's presidency, and he repeatedly said that he would ban guns, even 9mm.
Whether it's a 9mm pistol or whether it's a rifle is ridiculous. I'm continuing to push to eliminate the sale of those things, but I'm not likely to get that done in the near term.
Now, all of a sudden, you're a gun-toting citizen that would shoot up an intruder if they break into your house? So in other words, all of us need to get rid of our Second Amendment, but those in government get to keep theirs. Noted. Law number 30. Trump tried 60 times to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Yes, Trump attempted to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, but he didn't try to get rid of affordable care. The Affordable Care Act law was far from affordable for everyone. Insurance premiums were increasing. People in 2013 were paying around $240 for coverage compared to around $550 in 2019 after the ACA. Deductibles were higher while the coverage sucked. Many medical professionals hated taking the insurance and having to debate with the government and insurance companies on what they thought was or was not best for their patients. And good luck even finding someone in your network. Also, employers were scaling back and were hiring fewer employees because they couldn't afford to cover them due to the mandates of ACA, making it hard to even keep insurance and fined if you weren't insured. What Trump was doing was bringing back choice in medical insurance and signed Executive Order Section 1332, allowing states waivers to get out from under the mandates. He signed Executive Order 13877 to bring transparency and coverage and competition back in the marketplace. And the consumers now get to choose what plan works for their care and their pockets. He signed executive orders to eliminate surprise bills and still covers pre-existing conditions. However, Biden-Harris worked to undo most of that so the government can practice medicine. This administration loves to say that healthcare belongs between a person and their doctor, and the government should not be telling people what to do with their bodies. But yet, here we have the government consulting on your behalf, deciding what healthcare is necessary despite your doctor's recommendations. Law number 31. Donald Trump called climate change a hoax. It's true, but lacking context. Trump has not been scared to voice his opinion around the topic of climate change. However, his response hasn't been toward climate change itself, but more so the politicizing and, how he put it, the bullshit surrounding climate change's agenda, saying it's a money-making industry. And it is. Here we have multiple global leaders arriving to the G7 summit to discuss climate change. Are these airplanes, private cars, electric? How many carbon emissions could we have saved from polluting the air if they did, let's say, a Zoom meeting instead? And despite them discussing multiple ways to cut back on burning coal, the biggest contributor is China, and China says they don't care. They even sent a message to G7 saying that the days when small groups control the world's fate are long gone. Small groups don't run the world. So if the main contributor of emissions is not cutting back, should we? Sure. But is that really going to make a big splash in combating climate change? Probably not. Also, Kamala has been such an advocate for climate change, yet as she campaigns all over the country by Air Force 2, how much is she contributing to it? Is Air Force 2 electric? Is Air Force 2 zero emissions? I think not. Also, celebrities have the nerve to call us out for not doing our part and taking climate change seriously. But they, too, have some of the largest carbon footprints. Taylor Swift alone, during her Eras tour, spit out almost 400 metric tons. And that's not including emissions from production per show or how much fans contributed to it by being in attendance. But y'all care about climate change? And don't get me started on people and their electronics. Are we really going to stop using our gadgets and gadgets? Especially when cell phone production contributed to 580 million tons of emissions? No. Everyone is talking about climate change, yet those with the biggest carbon footprints aren't cutting back. Instead, we are being forced into drinking out of paper straws that are usually oftentimes inserted into plastic cups to save the planet. And you wonder why he called it a hoax? Law 32. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. Yes, manufacturing jobs were lost under the Trump administration, but it's not true that he didn't create more than was lost. And again, the bulk of the loss was during the pandemic. In the first 2 years of his term, around 460,000 manufacturing jobs were created. There was a dip around 2019 with a full decline during COVID. However, 770,000 of those jobs lost were recovered by the end of 2020. And in 2021, we were under new legislation. So again, who is to say that manufacturing jobs would not still have continued to rebound had Trump got his full 8 years? My closing statement is this. Kamala likes to say that Donald Trump will be in the White House with no guardrails. However, Kamala was able to get on stage and lie straight to our face over 30 times. And the moderators allowed it, her supporters encouraged it, and her House majority covered it. So who is going to hold Kamala accountable? Who is going to correct her when she lies about the border? Who is going to edit her when she lies about foreign policy? Who is going to call her out when she lies about taking our Second Amendment? And who is going to push back when she lies about the budget? Who is going to check her when she lies to you about your future? You have to. We have to. Friendship is not on the ballot. We are voting for a president, not a homegirl. We need a fighter. We need a negotiator. We need a leader. We need a warrior. We need strength back in the White House. There is a reason she can't answer if we were better today than 4 years ago, because she knows we aren't. Yet she still says there is nothing she would do differently than Biden, which means 4 more years of the same. We are less than a week away from Election Day. In America, we are in the fight of our lives, and our fate is on that ballot. Please don't fumble it.